Hi, everyone. It's Tawny, the Director of Communications at Bladder Cancer Canada, and it's the month of May. If you know anything about Bladder Cancer Canada or bladder cancer awareness, you'll know that this month is a very, very special month for us. It's Bladder Cancer Awareness Month, and this month of awareness happens around the world at a global level. Our partners at the World Bladder Cancer Patient Coalition have launched their campaign. We are a week in, and I'm excited to share with you that we have a number of really exciting, fascinating podcasts to share with you this month to raise awareness for bladder cancer across Canada. I feel like this is such an important podcast, and we're speaking to a very, very special person. Her name is Lisa, and her story is legendary at Bladder Cancer Canada, and not because she herself is a bladder cancer patient, but because she's the mom of a bladder cancer survivor. I'm not going to get into too many details other than to say when her baby boy, Matteo, was diagnosed at 16 months old, he was one of the youngest bladder cancer patients, and he received surgeries from a team of doctors that had never been done before. He's been written about in medical journals. Lisa is a nurse herself, so she's pretty comfortable talking about Matteo's experience and what he went through as a little boy. I want you to stay on the call because I have a surprise for Lisa. I have a surprise for everybody, actually. We will be joined at some point by Lisa's son, Matteo, but also by somebody else. That's very important to this family, and it's really important to the Bladder Cancer Canada organization. I'm not going to give it away. You'll have to listen and wait to hear who's coming on the air. Lisa, can you begin by introducing yourself and telling us how many children you have?
My name is Lisa Garland, and I live in Ottawa. I have 3 children and 3 dogs.
That's a full house.
It's a full house. It is a very busy household for sure.
And
Absolutely.
you said earlier that you're a nurse, I believe.
I'm a nurse. Yes, I've been a nurse for 28 years, I believe. Yeah, 28.
Okay.
1994, whatever that is.
So on top of running a busy household with kids and dogs, you're busy as a nurse.
I'm busy as a nurse in COVID.
In COVID.
In the middle of a pandemic.
That's right. You have two boys, both of them that have been diagnosed with cancer at some point in their life.
Yeah. So Matteo, who will be 14 on the 21st of June, was diagnosed with bladder cancer when he was 16 months old. Then he relapsed when he was 2. So the treatment, I believe, was like a 1.5 year protocol. And then his first 3-month scan showed reoccurrence somewhere in the prostate urethra area. They weren't really sure where it was. So then he was put back on another protocol, like 3 months after he had completed the first one. And then 3 months after that, it was still growing. So after that, they went in, he was about 2.5, I want to say, and they took his bladder and his prostate out. Okay. And then he finished that protocol, which in turn would have been about 3.5, 4 years. And 6 months after he completed, his brother was 2 and was diagnosed with leukemia. And he will be 11. Yes. So his protocol was 3.5 years. So it probably was closer to 4 years with like issues and all of that stuff. So like 8 years of solid oncology. Crazy.
Goodness.
Crazy.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, that's
It's
and
mind blowing.
it is mind blowing. And I think I read somewhere on your Instagram too that you were talking about that, there had been surgeries being done on Matteo that had never been done. And you were talking about
Yeah.
the fentanyl patches that he had to wear. And can you talk a little bit about that?
So apparently, I have a girlfriend who is in urology, and she had told, and she works for the surgeon or one of the surgeons that did his surgery, because it wasn't done at CHIO. It was done at the general hospital with one of the CHIO urology doctors, but apparently they canceled about 21 surgeries to do his surgery and get enough surgeons in there because it had never been done. But I didn't realize he had made the medical journals.
Okay.
So I think this is where that comes from. And because he was so tiny, and when they went in there, we didn't know if he'd come out with, an ileostomy and an ostomy, or we didn't know where the tumor was. So it ended up being in his prostate, and they took a little bit of his urethra, and they went like as aggressive as they needed to. And I guess it had never been done, but unfortunately with Matteo, he was allergic to morphine. So there wasn't a lot of drugs that were used on such a tiny human before, right? So we really, really had a hard time with him. He just was never, ever, the pain was never controlled ever. It was really, really difficult. So a lot of dilaudid breakthrough fentanyl. I begged for the THC pills, the Navalon. They wouldn't give it to us. They said, oh, just wait until like there's days with him not eating, and then maybe we can look at it. But it just wasn't done on someone so tiny.
Right.
And it still was very controversial, 10 years ago, right? So yeah, so he's on a lot of drugs. We finally got the morphine, the fentanyl, no, the Nabalon, kind of by default, because I played the silly nurse where I didn't have any brains. And he hadn't eaten for 48 days, and I had him home. He was having a lot of problems. He was very close to death and dehydrated. And we had brought him into Emerge, and they said, oh, just feed him a little bit of water. And they sent him home. He's literally a skeleton. Like the pictures blow my mind.
Lisa, I'm sorry. Did you say he hadn't eaten in 48 days?
He hadn't had food in 48 days. So he did have an NG tube,
Okay.
but he would puke it all up. Like he'd puke up 5-6 times a day, no matter what I did, no matter how fast or slow the feed was running. He
Okay.
really didn't keep a lot in. So of course he's dehydrated, and his ostomy bag, you could tell, right? There's no urine in it for 2 days. So the kid's dehydrated, and they wouldn't admit him. So of course we got back, and then he had a fever, and then they admitted him.
Okay.
But he ended up with like tophitis and a blockage and C. diff, and there was no way to control that pain. So there was a doctor on call from the general hospital who had come in, and I was like, what about Navalon? I heard it's a really good drug. He's like, yeah, oh my God, why isn't he on it? And he gave it to us without and I was just like, oh, okay, yes, let me try that. Like, I'll see. There's like, my pharmacist did research on it. I had papers given to his oncologists. They refused to do it. So they're like, do you want to start it now? I'm like, give him a dose now. Totally snowed him. But he'd get up, ate a Starbucks sandwich, went back to bed. It stayed down, got up, had what did he have? Like one of those like Starbucks, like a Frappuccino,
Right.
and kept down. And then he would think he was in the last 6 months of his protocol, and literally got rid of the fentanyl, got rid of the Demerol, some of the nausea meds, and just gave him the Navalon, and it saved his life for sure.
Yeah, it turned things around for you guys.
For sure, right? Just because of that doctor, I'm sure he got into heck, but
Yeah.
whatever.
But it's stories like this that we hear about too, right? Where it's so important for patients being able to advocate for themselves. And of course, when you're as young as Matteo is, to have your guardian, your parent, being your biggest advocate. And it doesn't sound like you gave up. I think like you were just like,
well, you need to be like an oncologist, right? So you're sitting there, and whether it be my nursing instinct or just parenting instincts, that you're constantly looking at the monitors, you're making sure you're watching what they're doing so that you understand what's going on and what would be abnormal if someone were to come in, right? And make sure that things are done right. There was at one point where there was blood everywhere, and in his bedside bag, and my mom had called me and said, you need to get down. I don't know where I was. I think I was en route, but she was just worried that there was lots of blood. And we get the doctor in. The doctor's like, oh, this drug, it bugs the bladder, so it causes issues, and you could have blood in the urine. And the student that's in there, I don't know what you call them, he was like the first year med student or whatever, and it's like, he has no bladder. Literally his platelets were 2 and he bottomed out. He was bleeding from every orifice, right? So like like if you're not there to notice something abnormal, like, and this dude, on rounds didn't realize he had no bladder, right? So you have to really, really pay attention and advocate for your kids, right? Or for anyone for that matter, because they're in no condition to do it. So by the time it got to Nicco, we were like golden. We used the left Matteo's Navalon and demanded that, like, we're just going to use this and get it off the street now. Like, if you don't give it to us, right? And so then they gave it to us.
Yeah, because you had been through it once before, so you were.
And it's life changing, right? Because the protocol for leukemia, the first month they stack you full of methotrexate and steroids. And so literally Nicco wouldn't be able to even lift his head. So he couldn't lift his head, his arms, anything. So you're like putting these rolls under his knees and you're turning him every 2 hours, and he's 2, right? And so if you were to give him the Navalon, he'd go from crying and screaming because of bone pain to being fine.
Okay.
Right. So we would give it to him every time he had to take the high dose methotrexate, and he went from crying with bone pain to up playing like a normal 2-year-old. A little stoned and some really big pupils, but whatever.
Yeah, but function.
Whatever the case may be, right? But
yeah,
it wasn't hurting him, right? So it was just so controversial at that time, I think. And it's not the time now where it's all like you can buy them at the corner store everywhere.
Right.
Right.
And for you as a mom to watch your children in pain like that must have been excruciating.
Yeah, I think back to when he had his surgery, and I went in, and my husband had called, and he's like, you need to get here. He's in a lot of pain. Like, we can't figure this out. And he was in ICU, and he had a fentanyl drip that wasn't working. I don't know if it dislodged or what was happening in the spine, but it wasn't working. And they had an NG tube in because he wasn't allowed to eat, but they would give him breakthrough Tylenol, but then suck it up through the NG tube. So he wasn't getting any pain control after they removed all these organs. And so you can tell, because the kid, no sound can come out of him, right? He can't cry, he can't do anything. He's in so much pain. So it was really, really difficult to demand to see, the pain specialists and get things down. And you just, I don't know, you just sort of do it. You get all mama bear, and it ends up being your job, right? So you don't have any other job but to keep this child alive, kind of thing, right?
And Lisa, I don't know if this is a tough question or not, but at any point, did you think you were going to lose either one of them?
I didn't. No. Isn't that weird? I didn't. People ask that all the time, actually. Now that I look back at it, I think, whoa, like, we definitely had some very close calls a bunch of times. And they had already said, had an adult had the stuff that happened, like, they would have died in an instant, right? They wouldn't have made it through the protocol. I guess there's one time where we were scared before the Navalon, and we wanted to cancel the treatment. We were like, we're done the treatment. We had already been in hospital, like the last 6 months we lived in the hospital with him, and we're like, we're done. A couple of the doctors had said, no kid finishes this protocol without dying. So I was like, well, we're going to stop it. Let's stop it. Let's get him some quality instead of quantity. And it was always such a fight with his doctor, and they when we had this conference with his doctor, she said she'd call the courts in. So yeah, so we had, yeah, she said we'll call the courts in. You can't stop it. You're you're making decisions based on emotion, and we know that this stuff happens, so we look at it differently. And she wasn't really nice about it. In the end, obviously, I'm glad that we didn't. But she could have said it. That there's doctors that don't have children, because you can tell how they talk, right?
Right.
So I think at that time we were kind of scared that he just was getting too sick. I don't know if I really thought about losing him at all. I don't think I don't know. Either I had too much Ativan in my system and I wouldn't let myself think about it, or it just never really popped into my head. It was just like this was my job. I'm going to do this, and we're just going to get through day by day. And I really didn't think about tomorrow or the next day. I did never think that he would be the age that he would be.
Right.
Because I learned that you have to just take things day by day, right? So hour by hour. So literally, like, he was going to live that hour. So then he'll live the next hour. And then so I never really looked anywhere into the future, right?
Okay.
So I guess the answer is no, I didn't. Now I think back going, whoa, that was like about 3 really close calls.
That's incredible. That's I as a mother, I would have been terrified. Yeah. I'm so happy to be talking to you today. We are going to be dropping this podcast on Mother's Day, so to be talking to a mom that was such a caregiver, such a mama bear to her 2 little boys that were fighting for their lives. Like, that's I can't think of a better story to tell our community than the story of you and the boys on Mother's Day. So thank you for chatting with me.
It's my pleasure.
One of the things I wanted to talk about is, and I think we've talked about it a little bit, but we know that so often the caregiver in a cancer diagnosis is often forgotten because the focus is primarily on the patient.
Right.
But at Bladder Cancer Canada, we worry all the time about the caregivers and the stress that they're under.
Yeah.
So we're actively looking into creating some online resources that are specifically for caregivers. So I wanted to ask you, can you talk a little bit about what it was like for you in those early days when your boys were just diagnosed? Like, what were some of the fears and the worries that you were dealing with?
I think,
how was it like? How did it affect your mental health, your emotions, all of that stuff?
I know I started to get anxiety probably closer to the end of his treatment, and it was more because I still had 2 other children at home. And when Matteo had relapsed, I'd just given birth. And so I didn't see my newborn. My mom had my newborn, and then I'm breastfeeding. So I'm now breastfeeding for 2 because I would give it to him in the bed, and then I would give the rest to Nicco, who was the newborn. So then I'd have to leave the hospital at a specific time to be able to pick up Nicco at my mom's and then pick up Jaden from daycare. But yeah, I think that's where my anxiety came, because I had to pick up one, pick up the other, but I had to do it by a specific time because she was at all day, extended daycare for after school program. So I don't want to pick her up at 6 o'clock when all the kids are gone. I try to be there for 5:30. But if you're caught in traffic, so I think more of my anxiety in that was trying to make sure that the other 2 were taken care of, right? And then I'm still hormonal from giving birth to this newborn, right? And so then I started getting panic attacks and anxieties, and I needed to, bye babe, good night. I needed to have respite in. I think that's what I would go to the recreation and stuff, saying, hey, can one of your people come in and watch him until, my husband comes in? Because if he was late from work or whatever the case may be, and then my mother-in-law would come in later and she'd spend the night. So we kind of had this thing. And so I'd be all day, he would be a couple hours in the evening, and my mother-in-law would do the night shifts, and then I'd be back in the morning after I dropped them off to their designation, right?
Mhm.
So I think it was just always that like fright and flight that kicks in that started like the panic attacks. And so I remember going one day to pick him up from where did I go? I went to pick him up from daycare, or no, he was going to get discharged. He was going to get discharged, and I got to the door and I had a panic attack and I couldn't get up there. So I had to call my husband from the car saying like, yeah, I'm not coming. Like, come down here for a second. And I tried to like get through it and it just didn't happen. So I just would get these like nasty panic attacks. So then I'm having Ativan to get in there, right? And then you're kind of snowed. So you're like sleeping with them. And it was just like a vicious cycle, because you just, respite would be nice. Like just someone that would come in and just take over for a little bit so that you can do whatever it is that you need to do, right?
To take care of yourself in those moments.
Yeah, there's no one really to do that for you. So you're
Wow.
just you're constantly doing it, right? So then if you're, someone needs to work, right? I was on mat leave at that time, but at some point one spouse is working and then the other one's taking care of everybody. And then you just sort of break down, right? Because then you have to do lunches and dinners and spend time with the other kids, because my daughter's totally messed up from it and she's going to be 19.
Okay, so she was much older when
She
Matteo.
she was 6 when Matteo was diagnosed,
Okay.
and 9 when Nicco, 10, 11, something like that, like old enough to know that she was shipped to who knows where and when, right? The neighborhood just kind of got together and made sure she was covered after school and stuff when we were in initially, because it was during H1N1.
Okay.
And so they weren't letting people out. So like I wasn't allowed out or anything, right? Because otherwise if he couldn't get chemo to start or all the tests to start or whatever, right? So they just wouldn't let us out after they did the biopsy and stuff, right? So you're like, I've got another kid there. So there's like
Did they keep you at the hospital? Like
they kept us in surgery.
Okay.
Yes, he had, because when he was diagnosed, he was in renal failure. And so, because the tumor, depending on which way which is how we couldn't figure it out, but we kept sending him to emerge and they sent us home. But depending on which way he lied, he would be able to pee, but then another way it would block the urethra.
Okay.
And so they'd be in so much pain. And then we'd bring him into emerge going, what's wrong with this? And they gave us every ridiculous answer. And then finally, I remember getting him up from his nap and he still wanted to sleep. And I'm like, something's going on. He needs to go back. So my husband took him back. And then I think that was at like noon, because I had to wait for the daughter, brought her to my mom's, got there around 8, and they had just got the diagnosis. And they had drained a liter of urine from his bladder and his kidneys. And so he was in acute renal failure. And he's like this big, like he's so tiny. And he used to be able to speak like a normal, like 16-month-old, but lost it. Like it was done. He stopped speaking until I think he was 4.
Wow.
So he didn't speak at all. So we've got these adorable videos, and you don't realize he's been in hospital so long, and iPads came out probably 2 years into it, maybe.
Right.
And then he'd seen himself on camera and he had like the NG tube in, and he's like trying to say like, what's this? But for a 4-year-old, like it isn't fluent, right? It's very broken. It's probably what a 2-year-old would do maybe.
Right.
And so he wasn't speaking, and he's like, what's this? I'm like, that's how you eat. And he's like, I eat that way. And it's just like this video, and you don't realize he had never seen himself. He didn't even know what he looked like, because you're in the hospital all the time.
Right.
And there's no mirrors.
Right.
You're like, whoa, he just literally saw what he looked like. And he had like no eyebrows and no eyelashes and no hair.
Because of the chemo and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Your oldest one going through what she'd went through. and then Matteo going through, and then Nicco
Yeah,
coming along. Like it's
yeah,
been a
it's a
lot
lot.
for you over the last, I guess, 12 years.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a lot. You have to kind of learn like when they're done how to like live
Right.
because you're still in that fright and flight, right? So you have to like the doctor's like, okay, so now you've got to figure out how to stop living that way, which is not an on off button, right? It was more I didn't want to miss anything while they were well. So
Mm,
in case something had happened or if there was a relapse or whatever, I didn't want to miss any second with them while they were well, because if I was gone and I missed that day when they were well and then now they're sick again,
right.
it would be the biggest regret, right? But I think probably just in the last 2 years, maybe, that I've learned that I can go
Okay.
and be okay with it.
Yeah.
2 years, just before COVID, just before
Okay.
COVID.
And then
I took
COVID hit, and you're like,
yeah, yeah. So, and it's just a thing. And I would be very panicky if I would leave, and my husband would take me to Montreal or whatever. I'm like, no, we got to get back. We got to get back. Like, I can't do breakfast in the morning. I'm starting to panic, and the whole time I'm there, I'm on, drugs for anxiety. So you can't enjoy anything, anyways.
right.
Right. So you just couldn't do it. I couldn't fully commit to anything or be anywhere. I needed to be super close to them. Otherwise, I would start panicking. And it's like this whole body panic. And so I think in November of like 2 years ago was my birthday. And I said, I need to do this. I need to do this for me. And if I start to panic or have an anxiety attack, I'm bringing my mother with me. So what place to do it? I'll panic in South Beach, whatever, right? Like great place to panic, but I'll figure it out. And
Right.
it was sort of my first trip where I made myself go without anybody in the family, like the boys or my husband or anything, to try to figure out how I could be me
Mhm.
again. And I did great. And I didn't want to come home. And I was like,
Good. So you got to be
this is the
Lisa
best
on the
place
beach.
on earth. I was
Wow.
still, conscious of like still a little anxious, but nothing that I couldn't deal with for sure.
Oh, that's
And so
amazing.
I'm like, oh my God, I can go on trips now.
Yeah.
COVID, boom.
Right. Right. It's interesting. We're getting more and more women showing up on social media wanting to tell their story, which is, it's really interesting because I actually was going through the Canadian cancer statistics today, and for women, bladder cancer has gone from being the 11th most common to number 8. So it's on the
Oh,
rise, like it's going up. So more and more
it's
women are
so aggressive too.
yeah, yeah, it can be. It can be. And if it's not diagnosed early,
Yeah.
we know that. We're actually in June, we're launching our first ever women's support group. So it's going to be all women
Oh,
talking
that's
about having
amazing.
bladder cancer. Yeah, yeah.
That's
It's
amazing.
it's exciting. It's
Yeah.
exciting to create that safe space, right? For them to talk freely and just
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
sexual issues they might be
Yeah.
experiencing,
Absolutely.
stuff happening to their reproductive system. Like
Oh
it's
my, like
yeah.
everything going on. And, now this one's going to be hitting puberty soon, right? And he doesn't have a prostate. So there's a lot of things that he doesn't use that he's going to want to use.
Oh,
Now it's trying to figure out all of that stuff,
oh
right?
my gosh. Yeah.
Hmm.
Wow.
I know. I'm like, hi, so he needs an implant like right now. And they're like, no, no,
Right.
because then he'll grow and then the implant will be there and then this will be over here and it'll kind
Right.
of be hanging. And I'm like, you can't do it right when he's like ready and available to do stuff. Like, who wants at 18 to like, okay, well, you can't use this till you're 18.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we're trying to just like be a little more proactive that way. And I try to keep pushing. So we'll see what happens. He's pretty chill right now and he doesn't. I'm like, do you like boys? Do you like girls? Anything? And he's like,
Right.
nah, I don't know. I know nothing. I'm like, okay. So we have the talk when we change his bag all the time. We'll just talk about stuff,
Right.
because he's so little when he had it, right?
Yeah.
And he doesn't know what to do with that appendage now.
Yeah.
He's never seen it work, right? He was too young.
Right. Right.
He used the bathroom for the last, I don't even think he was toilet trained, right? Because you usually with little kids, you sit them on the toilet to pee, regardless if they're boy or girl, because they can't reach the toilet.
Right.
And the potty they sit. So he was two and a bit when they removed his bladder. He's not toilet trained at that point, but he'd already been in the hospital.
Right.
So you're hooked up to a catheter anyway.
So
Right.
yeah, so he would never remember or have any experience with peeing or anything like
What
that.
penis does. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is what it's going to need to do.
Right.
So we'll have that talk. And he's like, why are you telling me this? And I'm
In a
like,
few
well,
years, he'll want to know.
listen, it's because you need to know.
Right.
Right. But you know what the wild thing is? My husband had taken him to urology or the endocrine to get all of his hormones because I wanted to make sure we needed to see. We know that radiation had boosted him into puberty sooner than all of his other friends. He was probably 11, 12 when he went right into puberty and things started changing, his voice, all that. So I wanted to make sure that the hormones were in line with where the age he was. And his hormones, apparently everything is perfect. Everything's fine. Like everything's like the way it should be. And they're like, yeah, and he should have kids. I'm like, excuse me? Like apparently we were told he couldn't.
Mhm.
But this guy seemed to think that it would be like a woman doing in vitro,
Okay.
that you'd be able to get it from the scrotum and put it in a dish and
Huh,
grow it.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. So apparently I was like, hey, don't even give me these hopes when we've told him already, like from the get-go, he couldn't have kids. Then he wanted to marry his sister and he's like, Jade, I want to marry Jade. And Jaden's like, sorry, I want kids. He's like, we can adopt. He's smart.
He's
Like
a
you heard,
very
grown up
smart kid.
person. Yeah, he's pretty smart. Pretty textbook smart for sure.
Oh my God. I'm, I'm so blown away by this story and talking to you. This is incredible. I just quickly wanted to touch base
Sure.
with you about how you came to get involved with Bladder Cancer Canada and what services or support were we able to provide you? I know that you participate in the fundraising walk. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
I had found Inspire, I think, while in hospital. I'm not sure how I came across it because everyone has this other website that they do things on, but I had come across this website for bladder cancer survivors or people with bladder cancer. And it was just this huge community that you were able to talk to. And I ended up getting involved with that. And some of those people, and I believe David Gutman as well, was on that. And they had done that. And they had heard of me and Matteo from there.
Okay.
And then when we had met David with his with swimming, and then we'd meet him throughout the years still, we had met Snooki that day as well. And Snooki had invited us to go to one of the bladder cancer meetings. And so we had brought Matteo when he was little, but as he started to grow up, I think it's just too much because there was such an age difference between him, and people were getting so much that they needed from him because of his condition and his situation, but he wasn't getting anything from everybody else because of course he can't see if they have ostomies or not. He doesn't understand, he's too little. So but I still wanted him to be involved in some way. And that's when Snooki had, I think it was the year after bladder cancer started their walk.
Okay.
Because it was just her and the doctors
Okay.
at some point, I believe. So then we were there with Max Keeping, and we did it with Max Keeping, and then every year after that. And it just sort of helped Matteo just sort of understand his peers, and just, it was more of, because he was so little, something to support him. It was just all about him. It was a walk about him. And so he'd get some of his, I think his teachers came and would walk, and his friends from kindergarten, then grade 1, grade 2. So there's families that have done it every year that have done it with him. And so then it just grows bigger and bigger every time, right?
It's huge. It's
So,
huge. The Ottawa Walk raises so much money. It's incredible how much
yeah.
effort goes into that walk.
Yeah, we didn't do it last year, unfortunately, because there was just so much, well, it was COVID too, and it was just, there was so much going on. But and then we did the leukemia one because both boys had to have their own cancers.
Yes.
Then
So a walk for both of them.
Right. And it was like light the night. Then it just got really overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
Because of what it just meant, right? And it just would hit me in the face every now and then, and you'd be like, oh, it just ended up being too much. I used to pretend that Nicco had like the flu, a really bad flu. It was the only way that I could get my mind around it,
right,
and wrap my head around it. So it ended up getting me through it. But then having to talk about it so often, right? Then you realize, whoa, this is my life.
Yeah.
So now I'm able to do it very easily, but just because of, I don't know, just bits and bits of like writing stories and all of that stuff. We were really involved with Bladder Cancer UK, I think. So we met a lot of amazing people out of the UK and did some stuff for them as well. And and so we sort of it really just helped him define the issues that he had, and that it made a day about him.
Right.
So it was more different on a superficial level because he just wasn't old enough to know anything, and there was only so much he could understand. Right.
Yeah.
So
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, but he couldn't walk very long for the first 3 or 4 years, right? And we'd have the stroller. And then Nicco got diagnosed. We still did it just as he got diagnosed, I think. Yeah, because he got diagnosed end of July, and then the walk was in September. Right. So he was right through it. So we had this big stroller, and slowly Matteo made it further and further and further, and now he can do the whole walk.
Lisa, I wonder if you would mind asking Matteo if he would like to jump on the call for a second. We have a special guest that wants to come on and say hello to you both. He's in the waiting room right now. It's David Gutman, one of Bladder Cancer Canada's co-founders.
Come and say hi. Can you say hi? You've never met her, but she's with the Bladder Cancer.
Hello.
Hi, Matteo. I have somebody that wants to come on the call to say hi to you. I don't know if you're going to remember him or not. I think you met him when you were really, really little.
Okay.
Hi. Hi there. Hi. Who's that big guy beside you, Lisa?
Do you remember him?
Not sure. It's been a little.
He's like, I don't know. Remember in the pool when he was swimming with you?
Yeah.
You remember him now?
Now you do.
I just didn't want to say anything.
You called him Grandpa P-Bag.
Okay, yep, now I'm
And now I'll make you a bet you swim a heck of a lot better than I do.
He swims so good.
Yeah, I know. I saw some of the video clips. Hey,
Yeah.
It's so great to see you guys.
You guys too. We miss you so much.
Well, we look forward to seeing. Hey, you know what? When this COVID thing's over, we're going to get to Ottawa, and we'll.
Are we having the bladder cancer walk this year?
I'm sorry?
Are we having the bladder cancer walk this year?
Absolutely having a walk this year. Snooki is taking care of it. And I'm sure you'll be hearing from her very shortly.
Oh, sure.
And talking about the walk, you're going to be doing it, are you?
Of course.
Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah. Matteo, you've been so important in doing that walk for us for so many years. Really appreciate that. You and your mom have been real supporters, and it's been such an important thing for bladder cancer, for raising the awareness and raising the funds you've done. And they've really done a lot of good work. A lot of research is underway. So thank you so much for everything you've been doing over the last couple of years,
Oh, you're such a good boy.
Yeah, you are such a great advocate for helping others. And I'm sure you're going to keep on doing it. And we really appreciate everything you're doing to support bladder cancer patients.
Right. As he's here naked with his pee bag hanging out.
How's school going for you?
Good.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
He's like
And,
all like 97s. It's crazy.
That's
oh
mad.
my,
It's
Matt.
insane how smart he is.
You're going to be one of these guys who send up rockets like spaceships and do programming perhaps and things like that. And any thoughts about what you want to do into the future?
Maybe something to do with woodworking, maybe.
Or a historian, you said?
Yeah, maybe.
He was talking about being a historian and taking German, Latin, and French.
Good,
Not French,
Not French.
Italian.
Italian, sorry.
good. And I've seen some postings about your sister, Jaden. She's doing really well, eh?
Yeah, she's doing really good.
Good. And how's
Yeah.
Nico?
He's good. He's on his way home. He just was at the park with his friends and he's super independent. They're all really independent,
Yeah,
which
great.
is nice. Yeah. Matteo puts on his bag all by himself, right? He's good. We got it. We got it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Theo, how are you doing? How are things?
Good.
Good. You got a lot of friends?
Yep.
Good. That's
His
great.
birthday soon. Can you believe it? He'll be 14 soon.
Yeah. I know I called you on your 12th birthday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And well, I remember to call you again on your 14th birthday. How many years is it now, Lisa? That's a long thing.
He was only, I want to say 3 or 4, because he had just finished treatment and he was in kindergarten. So we're around 4.
Yeah, I remember you coming in.
Mhm.
Do you remember going in the pool with me? You were just a
Yeah.
little tight, and you weren't quite swimming yet. You were close, but
Yeah, I remember the pool.
yeah, that was fun. We did that together, just the two of us, and then we had Mom join us and Snooky join us.
Mm-hmm. That's a long time. That's a decade ago.
That's a decade ago.
Yeah.
And you know what? I remember that so well.
Me too.
That was you and I going up to the pool to change upstairs. And then we jumped into the pool together and we had a ball.
Yeah, it was so fun.
I'll never forget that time. That was just a wonderful time we had.
Yeah. Right. Did you have fun?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was detrimental to him too, right? Just to adapt to new things and new surroundings and to see someone else who had an ostomy bag as well, right?
Good.
Mhm.
Well, we both have it and we're living with it and we're doing okay with it. Right? Good. Okay, well, I'm going to wish you all the best in the walk. I'm going to watch your fundraising efforts, but more important, I'm going to watch you walk and wave at you guys. Hopefully, we'll be able to see you on TV or whatever. And that would be great. And look out, because this summer, if COVID and the weather's, Marilyn and I have been talking about that, and we are planning to come by Ottawa and see you and spend a little time, maybe even get by your resort area. Eh?
Oh my God. Yeah, sure. Come down. I should be in Toronto sometime in June too. So I can let you know. I should be down there. I mean, I'm full of meetings, but I should be able to get out.
Well, please let me know.
Yeah, I will.
Okay. Well, great. Hey there, Tawny.
Hi, David.
How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for popping on the call tonight. This is amazing.
And thank you so much for inviting me. This was a real treat for me.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate seeing you guys. And again, thank you so much for everything you're doing. And
no problem. Care. Our pleasure.
Okay.
Bye.
Take care. And
Thanks,
we'll see you again sometime soon. Bye now.
Say bye.
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 It was so nice. He loves you guys so much.
So sweet. Oh my gosh. There was one time he brought them, like, I think he came here, Teo. Where was he? Or him and Snooky were somewhere downtown and we met them and he brought the boys like these remote controlled, like super noisy cars. So they're like in the basement winding them up. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to get him. I'm going to get him.
It's an interesting relationship. It's
because he was really tiny. And I find that it came at a point where he was sort of like getting really conscious about his bag. And so it was amazing to, it's just Courtney, it's okay. And so the CHIO had said, well, I think you should get him to see a psychologist. And I'm like, well, he doesn't even understand the Easter Bunny at this point, right? Because you've been in hospital for 4 years. So we need to have someone that's got a bag. And so the doctor actually introduced us to David, and it just happened that way. And it was perfect. Literally turned him around in a heartbeat once he saw that someone else had a bag and they were fine and everything was fine.
And that he wasn't alone with it.
Yeah.
You've lived so much. Like you appear to be quite young, and for what you've been through, it's incredible. Like it's
I'm not too young, unfortunately, but some good Botox and filler, it helps you out. Come on, moms, we all know.
The mom's secret, right? The mom's secret of how to keep going.
Yeah. You just sort of live. It took me a while, but I think I'm at it now where I'm finally okay, but it's like only the last 2 years.
Yeah.
So a good 7 or 8 to kind of try to recover from it all, right?
Right.
So, but yeah, no, they're good kids. They're really good, and they go for follow-ups all the time. Mateo's followed up. I think he's 10 years post now, just 10 years in February. I think he was 10 years, I want to say.
Okay.
So he goes like very few and far between, but he's still followed up with cardiology and all of that stuff because he's had his lifetime doses. So that's the scary thing, because there's nothing else they can give him if something happens.
Okay.
Yeah. So they've had all that the heart could take, kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed that it just.
Yeah. So I'm constantly just, I hover a little bit over him. They say he's my favorite, but it's just, when you lie with a kid all day, every day for 3 years, 4 years, there's something different about, right? Nicco wasn't as sick because we were able to control it differently. And obviously it wasn't as aggressive.
Right.
So we were able to figure stuff out. We learned quickly. And because I was a nurse, he got to stay home more.
Right.
Because I could do all the drugs myself.
Yeah, of course. Of course. So you've been very, very hands-on, and
yeah, we could change the dressings, do all that, but that's it. And now
now you're just Lisa.
Me trying to figure my stuff out like everybody else.
Going to the beach when you can, when it's not COVID.
I know. I'm so excited I get to go to like Toronto. So March was my first time in Toronto, and I took a train all by myself. And so I had all my friends calling, did you take any Ativan? How was your anxiety? I'm like, I literally took nothing. And so people don't understand now that, like, when I go to Tremblant or if we're taking the family somewhere on a road trip, I've always had to take anxiety medication, and I couldn't grasp where we were because you're already so stressed out. And now that I'm not on anything, you're just like, whoa, Tremblant is gorgeous. Yeah. People are like, you haven't been there? I'm like, I've been here thousands of times, but I've never been able to enjoy it because I'm so tense and stressed out.
Right.
So now it's almost like, and I don't drink. I've never drank since I've had my first kid. So 19 years. So I'm like, oh, you see, you can have my mom made me have she made me, you guys, have margaritas in Miami, and I'd only have half. And then by the end, she still makes fun of me that I could have a whole margarita and not feel like woozy, because I didn't want to feel woozy because then I'd feel like I was panicking, right?
Right.
And now I can have 3.
Oh.
And I'm like, whoa, is this what liquor does to people?
You're working your way up.
Yeah, like, is this why people go home and drink wine? Because I come home and drink coffee.
Right.
It's my thing, right? I have a cup of coffee, and I couldn't understand the wine thing. I don't understand why people go home and drink wine. I'm just like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is amazing. Like, this could be bad news.
Right.
Like, all your inhibitions and everything are gone.
Well, after everything you've been through, I think, you deserve a margarita or two, especially when you're sitting on a beach somewhere.
Thank you. I had a half of one. I was like golden, like living it all over again for the
Right.
first time,
Right.
right? But
Yeah.
you're smarter
Yeah.
because you're not 18 like Jaden
course.
is, where there's no cause and effect. You've literally lived life. And so I'm an incredible nurse. I'm a much better nurse than I was before. I run my own, I have 2 businesses. So I run them. And I'm just really smart about advocating for people who can't advocate for themselves. So I think that's where it all went, right? I opened my own business. I opened 2 of my own businesses. So I could help people make sure that they can advocate for themselves. And when oncology comes in, I'm not a textbook. So I can tell you what really happens and I can give you tips and tricks and all of that stuff, right? Because you're not just a piece of paper to read.
Right.
Right. So at least I can do that for as long as I possibly can anyway.
Yeah.
Fun. Yeah.
So what's a piece of advice that you would give to a mom that's placed in this role as a caregiver? There's got to be more kids out there like Matteo, so this might reach somebody that could use a little bit of advice.
Oh man, I wouldn't even know. Like just it's a ride. It's a horrible ride and that you will get through it and they had said to me in the beginning, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare, but pretty soon it'll be, history. You're going to get through it. Things will get through it. And then it'll just be a past nightmare. Right. And I think you just get up, do your thing, do what you can. And yeah, I don't know. I think every individual mama bear kicks in, right? People think I can't be as strong as you. You're so strong, but you know what? You're only as strong if you'll never know how strong you are till it's your only option. If it's the only choice that you have,
Mm-hmm.
you'll be stronger than you think. And it's your child. So you just get up, you advocate for them, you listen, you watch, you learn, and you do the best that you can, because that's all that you can do. And in the end, you'll, don't have any regrets. And, do your research, have really good people by your side. And if it's too much, tell people it's too much. When I started getting panic attacks, I'm like, I needed to have, by the time we got to Nicco, I took 3 days. I was in bed. I didn't get out of bed.
Wow.
I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't do it. Jaden's crying. My mom's over. I had a bunch of Ativan. I'm snowed myself. And I gave myself 3 days. Then I got up and went back, but I had to have someone with me, because if I had a panic attack and I needed to go, there was someone there. So I guess my best advice would be is to always just let people know how you're feeling. And if you need help, you need to ask for it. There's no shame in asking for help, would be my thing.
That's great advice. Great advice.
I think in a long way, that's what it would be. If you can't do it, find someone who can help you out. And there's always that person that's going to be there to help you.
And I think it was really valuable what you said earlier too, where you said at some points you were living hour by hour, or day by day, right? So sometimes it's just taking it day by day. It's one day at a time.
It's a learned thing for sure, because I'm the planner, right? And I see it with my 19-year-old. I got to plan this and I got to plan that. So I was the exact same way. So you learn very, very quickly that you don't make any plans. You can't do anything. You don't know if they'll be sick the next morning and into emerge. So you learn very quickly that you just live hour by hour. And once you're accustomed to that, it'll flow. So you just do what you can when you can do it. If they're well, you go. If they're not, you stop. You don't fight against it. You can't fight something that you don't have any control over. So you just roll with it. You roll with the punches and see where it leads you. And hopefully it'll be a good outcome, and it'll be a distant nightmare. Fingers crossed.
Perfect.
Yeah.
It'll eventually become a memory, which is what, we thrive for at Bladder Cancer Canada, for bladder cancer to be a memory, right?
Yeah. And it's, yeah, you just, and you don't want to ever forget it, because it gives you something. It gives you the fact that I was a really like high stressed individual. There's probably ADHD in there that we never got diagnosed when you and I were younger. It wasn't a thing. And so now that I bounce off walls, you're like, oh, now I know what that is. But I lost my train of thought. There was something really good I had to tell you. What was I saying?
We were talking about how you don't want it just to be
Oh,
a
a
memory
memory.
because there's
Yeah.
value in it being.
Yeah, there's value in it, because I was a high stress individual, and I would be the one that would stress over spilt milk. But when you go through something, or your family goes through something, you really, really understand what's important.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're forced with life and death situation, nothing else is more important than that. So when they're saying, you got to get them to stop the soother at 2, or you got to get here, you got to get there. Like, you're late, you're whatever the case may be. Like, it's not life and death. Right. So nothing will stress you out, because your worst fear has already come true. So everything after that is peanuts. Right. So that you understand that. Yeah.
As a mother, I can say it's honestly been a privilege for me to talk to Lisa today about her experience with bladder cancer and what it's been like to raise not just one child diagnosed with cancer, but 2. She's a busy mom of 3 kids. She's a nurse. She has 3 dogs. Her life is full, and yet she didn't hesitate to share her personal experience and the challenges that she's faced as a mother going through what she went through. She talked really openly about her anxiety supporting her boys through everything they went through. And I'm just so grateful for how honest and real and genuine she was with us today. In closing, there are currently 80,000 Canadians living with a bladder cancer diagnosis, and 12,500 more will be diagnosed this year. At Bladder Cancer Canada, we are doing everything we can to increase awareness of this devastating disease to as many Canadians as possible. Our mission is simple: to support patients, increase awareness, and fund research. You can find out more information about bladder cancer, our organization, and webinars by visiting our website at bladdercancercanada.org. Please join us in making our vision a reality, a world where bladder cancer is just a memory. If you enjoyed today's podcast, help us make a difference. Consider making a donation at bladdercancercanada.org. We commit to using all funds in a responsible and transparent way, ensuring that your donation helps people in their fight against bladder cancer. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time, I am your host, Tani Barrett.